Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Accessible Web Office Hours and Webinar Series. Today, Elena and Isabella will be presenting Making Your Brand Guidelines and Component Libraries Accessible. This webinar will be recorded and made available afterwards. A link will be emailed to you if you registered for the webinar, and the video will be uploaded on our Accessible Web YouTube channel. After the presentation, we will be answering questions. If you have any, please provide them in the Q&A section below. All right, guys, take it away.
Thanks, Hope. Hi, everybody. I'm Elena Burney, the Customer and Product Experience Manager here at Accessible Web.
And I'm Isabella Logan. I'm a digital accessibility specialist.
So, yeah, why start early? If we're making our brand guidelines and component libraries accessible, that's starting a bit earlier than doing an audit after something is built. So what's the justification here? We refer to this as shifting left or incorporating accessibility earlier in the software development lifecycle. This enables organizations to create experiences that are really delightful to users and inclusive of a wide variety of individuals. Also, it can help save a lot of time and money. So what are brand guidelines? Brand guidelines define the look and feel of how a brand behaves across all touch points, and this commonly includes presentation of digital content. Now, component libraries, when we're talking about these, we're referring to a central repository of components that you can use to deploy the newest features to customers at any time. Not everybody maintains their code like this, and that's all right. But it does give us an opportunity to work a little bit more efficiently to address accessibility issues in a more widespread manner. This way of structuring the code base is kind of analogous to having templates for creating websites. If accessibility is built into a central repository or a template like this, it's a lot easier to deploy new sites, features, or applications that are baseline accessible from the start, instead of assessing on staging or even post-launch and then going back and fixing what's already broken. So when accessibility is incorporated into both brand guidelines and component libraries or web page templates, teams can be empowered to more easily create inclusive experiences. Through an accessible component library, they have baseline accessible components. Combined with brand guidelines that were created with accessibility in mind, teams have the tools to customize those components without marring accessibility. Sometimes audits and remediations are necessary, especially when upgrading legacy products. But through thinking forward like this, we can avoid getting stuck in an expensive, never-ending audit and remediation cycle, and instead shift left into a more sustainable maintenance phase. Developers want to focus on building great features and not just constantly circling back to fix accessibility issues. Through embedding accessibility into both design and development from the start, we reduce that frustrating back and forth where devs struggle to build designs in an accessible way. The result of this is smoother collaboration, fewer delays, and more inclusive experiences from the beginning. Now, what do we mean by accessible? We base our general understanding of accessibility when it comes to digital experiences off of the POUR acronym, P-O-U-R. That comes from WCAG, or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So that stands for P, perceivable, O, operable, U, understandable, and then R, robust. So we want to ensure that users can perceive that information, and we're not relying on just one sense alone for perception. So for example, if you have a meaningful image, provide alternative text so that users who can't perceive that image visually can still get the meaningful content. Users also need to be able to operate the interface, and not everybody uses a mouse. Most assistive technology relies on a keyboard interface, so ensuring components are operable via the keyboard is a great way to begin to meet this operable requirement for accessibility. Users also need to be able to understand the information and how to operate the interface. Providing clearer error messaging or instructions can help with this. And lastly, robust. Users need to be able to access the content as technologies advance over time. Ensuring that the name and role of user interface components can be identified programmatically is a good way to future-proof.
Okay, so common pitfalls within the brand guidelines. Accessibility should be a core component of your brand guidelines. Addressing accessibility within your brand guidelines can be a great starting point for accessibility within your organization. There are many common accessibility errors that can be addressed by integrating them directly into your brand guidelines. A common pitfall is color palettes that fail contrast checks. This means that your normal text does not meet a contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1, and that large or bold text does not reach a 3 to 1 contrast ratio. Images or iconography with no guidance on alternative text is also a common issue found. This includes brand images that don't contain the appropriate alternative text and images that are not correctly labeled as decorative or meaningful. Another issue occurs when there is not guidance on accessible link styling. This can include provided link styles that rely solely on color to differentiate themselves from surrounding text. And then also inappropriate heading usage can also stem from a brand guideline. For example, for example, elements are coded as headings due to their visual appearance instead of their structural importance. Okay, so moving on to making brand guidelines accessible. Here are some first steps you can take within your brand guidelines to encourage accessibility. Testing contrast values can provide guidance on when and where to use different brand colors. Using your brand colors, you can provide accessible color combinations. This takes away room for color contrast errors and ensures a consistent, accessible look. Images and icons should have information about the usage of alternative text. Adding information within the brand guidelines to differentiate between meaningful and decorative elements is useful. It can also be really useful to provide sample versions of alternative text for products. This allows team members to implement alt text easier for new products and services. Make sure that images of text are also avoided. There's a few exemptions, such as using logos, graphs, screenshots, and diagrams, but most cases you should not be using an image of text. Links need to be styled in ways that are distinguishable from surrounding text. This can be done by either meeting a 3 to 1 contrast ratio against the surrounding text or by underlining the link text. And then providing a clear heading structure for both documents and web pages can help avoid accessibility failures. It's really important to emphasize that headings are used for titles or labels for the content that follows them and not just as emphasis of words. Perfect.
And now for component libraries. So like we said before, component libraries standardize user experience by having a central repository of components that can be deployed at any time. Some common pitfalls we see here are missing proper roles, like for example, using a div instead of a proper button element and not adding that ARIA role of button. Labels that aren't programmatically related to their associated components. So if somebody is navigating with the screen reader, that label might not get off along with the field. Also incorrect use of ARIA and missing communication of state, for example, expanded or collapsed. So these issues, when they're present in a central component library like this, they just multiply as these components are used across different products. Yeah, so let's move on to how to address them. So for building inclusive components, use semantic HTML whenever possible. Instead of using that div and potentially forgetting the role of button, use a button element if you can. Ensure your interactive components have programmatically related labels and you're not just visually positioning text to act as a label. Only use ARIA when necessary and use it with intention. There's a saying in the industry that no ARIA is better than bad ARIA, so definitely keep that in mind. Also ensure that the role and state is communicated properly for interactive components. This can be a big lift for some. There are ARIA design patterns available from W3 that can be really helpful. And we're also available to assist for any of our clients. So the real secret sauce here is collaboration. Designers, developers, and content editors can develop checklists to make sure that they're owning the things that they need to look out for. Designers can make sure that things like appropriate color contrast ratios are present in their designs, that visible indications of focus are present and meet acceptable contrast ratios, that touch targets are sufficiently large, and that there's programmatically defined structure to a page, for example, using headings or landmark regions. Developers can ensure that semantic code is being used and recommended keyboard interactions are being supported. This can be done through using semantic HTML, ensuring expected keyboard navigation, ensuring components properly communicate their role and label. And on top of all of this, they can test with assistive technology. This might be some quality assurance team or a different team than the developers, depending on your organizational structure, but it is important to test these components before they're deployed. And then content editors, they can be in charge of ensuring that messaging is clear, inclusive, and structured well. For example, ensuring headings are descriptive of the content that follows them, similarly for labels, ensuring that alt text is both descriptive and concise, that link text is descriptive of where that link will go and not just something generic like click here, and that error messages are truly helping users identify the issue at hand. So we're here to help. We at Accessible Web have web accessibility software, audits, we can provide BPATs, and a lot of what we've discussed here we can help out with through consulting and training. So we have courses in Accessible Web Academy that are self-guided and you can complete on your own time. And we also do design reviews. We can assess your brand guidelines and make recommendations on how to incorporate accessibility, and we can audit your component libraries. So get in touch if you feel that you'd like us to help in any way.
Okay. Yep. We're on to our discussion time, our question